It was the kind of night when the rain taps against the windows like tiny fingers. Little Oliver sat cross-legged on the floor of his room, a room filled with colorful drawings and stuffed animals scattered across the carpet. He was playing, as he often did, with his imaginary friend, Laughing Jack. Laughing Jack had been with him for as long as Oliver could remember. He was tall, with skin as white as snow and a huge grin that stretched from ear to ear. His clothes were striped, black and white, like the kind of suit you'd see on an old-time circus performer. He had a squeaky, high-pitched voice, always making Oliver laugh with jokes and playful antics. They would chase each other around the room, pretending to be pirates or superheroes. Laughing Jack was the best friend Oliver had ever had. "Are you ready for the treasure hunt, Ollie?" Laughing Jack asked, his voice lilting with excitement as he bounced around the room. His exaggerated smile made Oliver giggle every time, as though it were the funniest thing he'd ever seen. Oliver nodded eagerly. Yes, yes. Let's find the treasure. The two of them scurried through the room, laughing as they'd discovered hidden treasures, old toys that were once lost, forgotten trinkets, even a shiny coin that Oliver had found in his dad's desk drawer earlier that day. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Everything was fine. Laughing Jack wasn't scary. He was just fun, just a friend. But as they played, something strange began to happen. Oliver noticed that the room was growing colder, the air heavier. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to shift, like they were alive, stretching and twisting in unnatural ways. The lights flickered. "Ollie, come closer," Laughing Jack called out from the far corner of the room. His voice, once playful, now had an edge to it, a low, menacing undertone that Oliver couldn't quite place. "Come on, I've got something special for you." Oliver stood up, still unsure of the change in tone, but feeling the pull of his friend's voice. He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder at the door. The hallway outside was dark, quiet. His parents were downstairs as always. Nobody was around to stop him. "Okay, Laughing Jack," Oliver said, though his voice was quieter now, uncertainty creeping into his chest. As he walked toward the corner, the temperature in the room seemed to drop even further, and the floor creaked beneath his feet. The shadows seemed to press in, surrounding him, as if they were closing him in. Laughing Jack stood there, his smile stretched unnaturally wide, his eyes hollow and black, like empty voids. "Don't worry, Ollie," Laughing Jack said, crouching down in front of him. His grin grew even larger, stretching impossibly wide across his face. "I've been waiting a long time for this." Oliver took a step back, confused. The room felt wrong, too wrong. The laughter had stopped. Laughing Jack's eyes were no longer playful. They were cold, empty. "What's happening? You're scaring me," Oliver said, his voice shaking as he stumbled backward. Laughing Jack's head tilted to one side, his grin never faltering. "Oh, but I'm not done yet, Ollie. We've just begun. You're mine now, and we're going to play together forever." The shadows in the room seemed to twist and writhe like living things, moving toward Oliver, enclosing him in darkness. The cold was unbearable now. And then, just as Oliver tried to run, Laughing Jack reached out, too fast, too powerful, and with a quick motion, grabbed his arm, pulling him back into the darkness. Oliver struggled, trying to break free from Laughing Jack's iron grip. His heart pounded in his chest, his breath coming out in quick gasps. "Let go of me," he screamed, his voice shaking with fear. But Laughing Jack's grip only tightened, his fingers cold as ice. The clown's grin seemed to stretch even wider, pulling back into something grotesque, inhuman. His eyes, those dark, empty sockets, seemed to gleam with something darker than night. "You can't escape, Ollie," Laughing Jack said, his voice no longer high-pitched and playful. It was deep and raspy, like someone dragging their nails across a chalkboard. "You're mine now. You asked for this." Oliver's head spun, his mind racing. "No, you're not real. You're just my imaginary friend." Laughing Jack let out a sickening chuckle, one that made the air feel thick and suffocating. Imaginary. Oh, I'm as real as the fear you feel, Ollie. Realer than anything in this pathetic little world. Oliver's vision began to blur, the room spinning as he tried to escape. The shadows seemed to stretch, curling like tendrils around his body, pulling him into a place where no light could reach. Laughing Jack's laughter echoed around him, growing louder and louder until it felt like it was coming from inside his head. "Why are you doing this?" Oliver cried, his voice barely a whisper now. He could hardly breathe. The room was suffocating, the air growing colder with each passing second. "Because you called me Ollie," Laughing Jack hissed, his face now inches from Oliver's. His teeth were sharp, jagged, like broken glass, and his grin no longer looked like a harmless smile. It was a monstrous, twisted sneer. "You gave me a name. You invited me in. And now, you'll never get rid of me." Oliver's heart raced as his mind spun with confusion and terror. Was this really happening? Was his imaginary friend, his playful, fun friend, now something else entirely? Something evil? The shadows around him seemed to come alive, wrapping tighter and tighter around his limbs, as though the room itself was trying to trap him. "Please," Oliver gasped, trying to push against Laughing Jack's chest. "I just want to go home. I just want to see my mom. Please let me go." Laughing Jack's cold, hollow eyes glimmered with amusement. He tilted his head once more, studying Oliver as though he were some kind of insect under a microscope. "Home," Laughing Jack said softly. "Oh, Ollie, this is your home now. Your real home. Your mine forever." Suddenly, the shadows pulled him into the center of the room. The floor seemed to open up, as if the very foundation of the house had cracked. The room was no longer a room. It was a dark void, a place where the rules of time and space didn't matter. There were no walls, no windows, just darkness, broken only by the glowing, hollow eyes of Laughing Jack. Oliver screamed, but the sound was swallowed up by the emptiness. "You'll never escape me," Laughing Jack said, his voice cold and cruel. "You thought I was just a game, Ollie. You thought you could play with me and have fun. But this is the real game now, and there are no winners here." The shadows wrapped tighter around him, and with a sickening crack, Oliver felt his body go limp. His mind faded in and out, trapped between the nightmare and his fading consciousness. He tried to call out to beg for help, but his voice wouldn't come. "Sleep now, Ollie," Laughing Jack whispered, his voice a soft lullaby that made the darkness feel heavier. "Dream of me. Dream of the endless fun we'll have together." Oliver woke up, or at least he thought he did. But nothing was the same. The world around him was a blur, an endless gray void stretching out into nothingness. He tried to stand, but his legs felt like they were made of stone. The shadows still clung to him, wrapping around him like a suffocating blanket. And then, Laughing Jack appeared, as if summoned by Oliver's own fear. His grin was wide and cruel, his eyes glinting with malice. "Ready to play, Ollie?" Laughing Jack asked, his voice echoing in the void. "Because we're just getting started." Oliver stumbled backward, heart pounding in his chest. "Please, please no more." But Laughing Jack's laughter filled the void, drowning out his words as the shadows closed in around him. "You're mine now, Ollie," Laughing Jack repeated. "Forever, and there's no escape." And so the game continued. For Oliver, there would be no end, just the endless laughter, the twisted smile, and the cold darkness. Laughing Jack's imaginary friend, the one he had once loved, had turned into his worst nightmare. And the worst part, it would never stop.